Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. Donald Trump's decision to end temporary protective status for hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans cut like a knife through the South Florida community. After being told by Republicans in Florida, including Carlos Gimenez, Mario Diaz-Balart, Elvira Salazar, and Marco Rubio, that they had nothing to fear, Venezuelan voters who supported Trump now realize they were lied to by those same politicians they had trusted. This week, I spoke to Maria Corina Vegas, a Democratic Venezuelan-American activist and lawyer. It would be easy for her to tell her fellow Venezuelans, "I told you so," but there would be no joy in that for her. Instead, I asked for her reaction to what Trump is now doing.
Well, I think it's abhorrent. I think people who came through TPS and through the humanitarian parole program are here with a legal status. They came under a legal program. They were vetted, and they are hardworking members of the community who are distressed to find themselves in this situation and feel betrayed generally by the administration.
So much of the Venezuelan community bought into what Donald Trump was telling them, bought into what you said to me earlier, which was, you know, whether it was Maria Elvira Salazar, Carlos Gimenez, Marco Rubio, Rick Scott, Mario Diaz-Balart, all professing, you know, why Donald Trump was the answer, and why they should turn their back on Democrats. You know, what message do you have to say to your fellow Venezuelans now?
I think I'm so sorry that you were betrayed, because the people that have your back, it turns out they don't have your back. And not only are they coming for you, but they're coming for all other categories of immigrants that came in like you. I think it is really important for the Venezuelan community to understand that this is not just about them. And for the Miami-Dade community at large, Democrats need to, you know, make the contrast and present themselves and lean into the difference between what it means to treat people humanely, to try to solve things in a way that brings democracy to Venezuela. Trump obviously thinks that Venezuela is a great place to go back to, and there are people that have to go back in April that, you know, are basically going to be targeted. He sent an envoy to meet with Maduro and shook hands with Maduro. So what does that say to every Venezuelan that was assured that the Trump administration was going to ensure that Maduro left power and that the democratic will of the Venezuelan people would be honored?
What do you say, though, to the Maria Elvira Salazars and the Carlos Gimenez and the Rick Scotts and the Mario Diaz-Balarts who gave that message, who said you can trust Donald Trump not to do what he's doing now? What did they do?
What do I say? Nos clavaron una puñalada por la espalda. You betrayed us. You betrayed your community. We don't have Cuban Adjustment Act for Venezuelans. We don't have a Cuban Adjustment Act for Colombians. We don't have a Cuban Adjustment Act for Nicaraguans. Reagan was the president, was a Republican president that, you know, was supportive and welcomed the benefits of immigrants in the United States. What happened to that? What happened to the idea that America is a country of immigrants?
Well, isn't that, but let me just sort of jump in.
Yeah.
That seems to be a relic of the past. This new America largely seems to be anti-immigrant. You know, you're not seeing
I
people
disagree.
protesting. You're not seeing people protesting, you know, these immigration measures. If anything, the vast majority of the public seems to be supporting and okay with what Trump is doing with deportations to other countries, with opening up Guantanamo Bay to start housing more and more people. All of those things.
I completely disagree with you. I think we are overwhelmed with everything that's happening because he clearly campaigned on one platform and he came prepared with something else because no one, not even the Republicans in office at the time and who are now extolling the administration to return the TPS protections to Venezuelans based on the pressure from their own constituents, are supporting this in Miami-Dade. Miami and South Florida would not be anything without Latin American immigrants. Weston wouldn't be anything without Venezuelans. Doral wouldn't be anything without Venezuelans. So I have to strongly push back on that because people are going to be pushing back not only on this, but on many of the other initiatives that are being taken by this administration that are counter to the fundamental American values.
You talked about the 300,000 or so Venezuelans who are legally in this country, who are citizens, who are registered to vote.
In Florida. In Florida alone.
Right. And that, you know, and what I thought was interesting was I listened to Governor DeSantis the other day when raised this question of Venezuelans feeling betrayed, and he just sort of sloughed it off by saying, well, no, anyone who voted for me or voted for Donald Trump is a citizen and isn't affected by it. And I thought to myself, do you not understand that the other 300,000 who are here who are affected, or there are nearly 1 million who are here and affected by the loss of TPS?
He obviously does not understand
that those are the family members of those voters.
Clearly, he does not understand. He does not understand that the people that are here in Florida that are related to those voters, you know, are the first ones, the voters are the first ones that are blindsided by that because they are happy to have had those protections and took advantage of those protections to have their families here, to have their families here legally, because it was dangerous and horrible for them to be in Venezuela, because the humanitarian crisis and the lack of democracy in Venezuela is still an issue. It hasn't gone away by a magic wand. It's not a great place to live to go back to Venezuela. And it won't be wonderful for the people that are going to be deported there. This is just something that is beyond the pale in terms of precedent, and for not only for the United States, but all over the international communities. I don't think legal programs, you know, that are passed by one administration, you know, and people that come here through those pathways can be from one moment to the other just taken the carpet from under them. It's not.
It does. Wait, let me jump in. It does look like the Trump administration has already cut a deal with Maduro, sending one of his emissaries, Rick Grenell, to Venezuela to bring out some Americans who are being held there, but more importantly, strike a deal with Maduro to accept those who the Trump administration now wants to deport back to Venezuela. You mentioned this just a sort of a second ago. What's going to happen to those folks who are being deported from South Florida back to Venezuela? What happens to them when they get back to Venezuela?
Well, they are going to be doxxed by the Venezuelan government. And it's horrible. They're going to go back to horrible circumstances. The circumstances are not going to change. And this is again a betrayal by Trump.
Are they at risk? Are they at risk in Venezuela?
Of course, they are at risk in Venezuela. They are at risk of being imprisoned. They are at risk of everybody who is in Venezuela. First of all, they are at risk of not being able to provide for their families. Right now, they are working here, they're paying taxes here, and they're helping their families back in Venezuela. But the other thing that Trump did by sending his envoy there is essentially recognize the dictatorship. And that's the most offensive thing, in my view, that has happened, because he didn't say, I'm going to impose tariffs on you like he's doing with other countries. He's not bullying Maduro. Maduro doesn't seem scared at all of Trump. In fact, Maduro seems to have played Trump. And Chevron seems to be getting its license renewed, and oil is going to flow, and that oil is going to provide money for the Maduro regime to continue to stay in place, repress its people, and continue being a bad actor in the region, together with Cuba and Nicaragua.
What do you think the answer to that is?
Like everything with Trump, he is a chaos agent. And it is unsure what will happen. But the one thing that we can be certain of is that we will, me as a Venezuelan and the Venezuelan community is tired of being played. So I will do my utmost here in Florida to hold everyone accountable.
Anything else you want to talk about?
We are not criminals. Venezuelans are not criminals.
When we come back, it looks like there could be a breakthrough in negotiations between the Florida legislature and Governor Ron DeSantis on immigration. We'll talk to a Republican state senator who has been in the middle of the immigration battle from the beginning. Stay with us. Welcome back. More than 10 days after the Florida legislature rejected Governor Ron DeSantis' immigration bill and passed one of their own, the two sides have been talking behind the scenes, and a deal could be announced any day. We'll talk about some of the details in a moment, but needless to say, there is a lot of posturing about how tough everyone can be on immigration. This week, I spoke to State Senator Blaise Ingoglia, a Republican from Central Florida who is closely aligned with Governor DeSantis. I started by asking if he thought there would be another special session this week on immigration.
Yeah, look, I hope it happens next week. The sooner, the better, because I want Florida to lead on this issue. I don't want to take a backseat to any other state. But I do think that they've been having some really good constructive conversations behind closed doors. It is my belief that they are very, very close to some compromise language. And hopefully we can get this thing buttoned up and done next week.
You said a second ago wanting the toughest bill, the toughest laws with regard to immigration. I've heard the governor claim that Florida is the strongest on these measures. But objectively, when you look at, let's just take the issue of E-Verify for a second. You know, I know that you're a supporter of it. The way the law currently is in Florida is it only applies to companies with 25 or more employees, and that in the last 3 years it's been in effect. I think it came out during one of the Senate hearings on the bill that there was only been used 8 or 9 times. That the DeSantis administration has not really been using E-Verify to its fullest extent. I want you to address that, because also I want to just sort of add, and I apologize for the length of the question, Florida is 25 or more employees. Georgia is 10 or more employees are required to use E-Verify, and Mississippi and Alabama require it for all employees. So how do you, I mean, I understand DeSantis likes to often brag about how we're the strictest here, but just on the face of it, Florida has not been the strictest when it comes to immigration.
So I think what you have to do is you have to take Senate Bill 1718 in total. And when you look at all the provisions of that bill, it was absolutely the strongest state-led anti-illegal immigration bill that has ever been passed into law by any state. But specifically when it comes to E-Verify, what we wanted What I wanted, what the governor wanted, what was everyone to comply with E-Verify. We didn't want it set at 25, but 25 was what we could get through the legislature. That was a sort of compromise language between the presiding officers and the governor. But what it's important to note here is from 0 up until 25, they still have to comply with federal law, but that's done through paper, through the I-9 process. The same in the bill, the same penalties are levied if you hire illegal workers, but then there's a separate penalty if you don't use E-Verify or if you're over 25 and more.
But you would admit that given the fact that there has only been a handful of cases in 3 years prosecuted or pushed, it's not even prosecuted, and the companies involved, there's no real teeth to it. It's just more they get a letter saying that they're out of compliance and they need to be in compliance. So again, I'm puzzled as to how the E-Verify system has worked in Florida and if it's actually really been effective.
So there is teeth to the current law. And look, Jim, I'm going to be honest here. I was a little surprised that there wasn't more crackdown on some of this going forward. I would hope that all levels of government, when we pass laws, that the bureaucracy and the regulators behind it would be serious and know that when we pass a law that we actually mean it. So I don't have answers of the why. All I know is that it concerns me because I want to make sure that we are doing everything that we possibly can to crack down on illegal immigration.
When when we're cracking down on illegal immigration and want to be tough, it seems though that there are certain groups, and I'm particularly talking about the in-state tuition folks, who end up feeling the real brunt of the pain. I understand that the in-state tuition is going to go away. I realize that the climate has changed in Florida from when it was passed in 2014. What I don't understand is why we can't find a way to allow those young people currently in college who plan for this, who the state gave their word and said, this is our commitment to you, why we would pull the rug out from under them. Why not let those 3,000 or 4,000 young people, students who are currently in college, to finish their studies over the next 2 or 3 years, graduate, and remain on in-state tuition. It's really not a cumbersome financial task on the state, and it just seems like the right thing to do. And it doesn't encourage any future illegal immigration in the state because that door closes behind them. Why not allow those young people currently in school to remain in school under in-state tuition?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that we have had conversations about a glide path, getting maybe 4 years glide path where it's going to be over. But at the end of the day, a policy decision was made, and the policy decision was ending the practice. Because when we look at this, the fundamental question has to be asked: does somebody who is not a legal resident of the United States, citizens of the United States, get the same benefits as somebody who is a citizen and a legal resident in the state of Florida? And I would say that policy question is answered unequivocally no. And you've seen polling back that up, that nobody agrees with that. So at the end of the day, it was just a policy decision to do it now. And I think part of that had to do with possibly somebody in the future trying to undo it, undo the glide path or extend the glide path. So if we do it now and we say that this practice should be prohibited in the state of Florida, then we are basically putting our foot down and saying, no, we are going to stop with this magnet that attracts people to the state of Florida if you're an illegal immigrant.
It seems as if one of the parts of your bill that may not make it into the compromise legislation deals with the issue of giving the governor the power to deport people by expanding the unauthorized alien transportation program. Your bill had about a $350 million financial impact of funding the governor's ability. And I heard the governor in a press conference talk about the ability of having deputies and others cross-trained with ICE officials and CBP, and to be able to deport people, and these are his words, the governor's words, on the spot. First off, it's ludicrous. You don't deport people on the spot. You don't grab a Haitian who lands in the Florida Keys on land. You can't take them, put them on a plane and fly them back to Haiti all in the same day. But my understanding is that is likely to be stripped out of the bill, and that any deportations would have to be done by the federal government. Is that your understanding as well?
So I think there's a good possibility that the state's ability to deport themselves may be taken out of the bill. But if we have a strong underlying bill cooperating with the federal government under 287G programs, so let me be clear. There used to be 3 287G programs. Now there's only one, which is the jail program. But they had the warrant program, and then they had the deputizing program. So if you have a strong 287G program that is working hand in glove with the federal government, identifying illegal immigrants in the community, especially the criminal illegal immigrants, aliens in the community, and the federal government is working hand in hand, then you don't necessarily need the state to do the deportation, because the federal government then will be on top of it. The problem with what, I wouldn't say the problem, but the challenge, because I think it's a good thing that President Trump is doing, is he's going to be trying to do this on a grand scale, and ICE does not have enough people in order to do that. The only way you can do that is to supplement, augment, and complement the what ICE is trying to do with local police and sheriff. So if you're able to do that hand in hand with the federal government, then that deportation process will go as quickly as possible. That's what I'm pretty sure the governor meant.
Have you had any discussions with the governor or the governor's staff about being appointed chief financial officer?
So I have not had any discussions. The governor knows that I'm interested, and I have been interested in running for chief financial officer in the 2026 election cycle. So he knows that I want to continue to serve the people of this great state of Florida. But what I also know is that I trust the governor's judgment. So while I have not had any conversations with him specifically on this, at the end of the day, I think he's going to make the right choice for the people of the state of Florida going forward.
You have an interesting setup here where you could potentially have 2 competing Republican slates of candidates in the 2026 cycle, where you could potentially be, a Ron DeSantis, part of a Ron DeSantis slate that has you as the chief financial officer, James Othmeyer, his former chief of staff, who he's putting in as attorney general, versus for lack of a better term, a Trump-related slate where Joe Gruters is running for chief financial officer, and you could have someone else who Donald Trump endorses running for attorney general, running for governor. Do you see that? Is that where the Republican Party is that there are DeSantis people and there are Trump people? And is that where the fight is going forward in the state of Florida?
I don't think so. I think that is more of a media narrative than anything else right now. It's it's sort of sexy to talk about Trump versus DeSantis. But at the end of the day, the voters are going to choose people who are just going to make sure that we're taking care of the state of Florida. So it's like a Florida first as opposed to an America first. So we all know each other. We all like each other. At the end of the day, if we wind up running against each other, it is what it is. And then we'll just run our campaigns and let the voters choose.
Do you really all like each other? Because I'm not so sure sometimes.
Jim, I like everyone. I get along with everyone. At least I try to.
We'll be right back after the break. Well, that's all the time we have today. If you have any thoughts or comments, feel free to contact me at jdefede@cbs.com. I do enjoy hearing from you. Thanks again for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.